On this episode of One Man, One Hand, and No Real Plan, we get nowhere. On this episode of One Man, One Hand, and No Real Plan, we figure out that tolerances really aren't that important. On this episode of One Man, One Hand, and No Real Plan, we get closer to finishing the windshield, but open up a whole can of worms on the roof. I've learned a ton from this episode, but I think the thing I've learned the most is this is why people build rat rods. So one of the things I got to figure out here is this is not, I mean, it should probably sit about where it's at, but you can see there's a big gap between where the roof is. Now, I'm not 100% sure on where the factory tolerances were, but I do have some damage you can see here, and it pushes this down a little bit. So consequently, where this is, you can see it dip just a little bit because of that damage right here. This roof interior panel is in super sad shape. So I think what I'm going to end up doing right now is I'm going to take the roof off. I'm going to take the roof off and fix this under piece, but I'm going to fix this or get it banged back into shape, and then figure out where these are supposed to be, these column pieces, the A-pillars on the exterior, because they're just, honestly, they were just nailed to the support beam that's inside, and we're going to figure out exactly where they need to be to sit consistently all the way around. Because you can see right here, I've got this gap is not consistent, and who knows what the factory was, but I'm guessing it needs to be like a finger width all the way around, just by where you can see, like right here where the rubber actually sat, and if it was soft, I would assume it's about that finger width. For those who are wondering, 12 minutes, start to finish. Technically 11 minutes and 48 seconds to take the roof off. While I've got this roof off, I think I'm going to go ahead and final weld the whole top of the roll cage. That way we can put it back on and leave it on after this. I'm not going to claim to be a great welder, but I believe those will work. After we got it all welded up, I went ahead and primed all the top of it because I would never be able to get to it really after that. And then I'm going to go ahead and paint it black in a second. Painted it black. We're going to work on the top first. Mainly, if I zoom in, maybe you can see it. You can see how this comes in and has that dent there. And honestly, this is interfering with how the windshield frame is supposed to sit up in there. So if I'm going to fix that, I'm going to fix, like, there's a dent here, and there's a ton of damage, like, as you go along here, you can see all these things. So I'm just going to start working on all those because I don't want to work on it above my head. I'm too damn short. If you ever want to see where all your dents are, just start sanding. I'm going to spend some time on this, trying to figure out how to, because I got to curl it up right there. This is the driver's side, and you can see how it doesn't have that damage to it. The shape of it's right. Now when you look at the passenger side, you can see just how bad that's bowed down. I think about the only thing I can really do is start trying to pull that out and up, this way and then up, and then seeing what else I can do to work with it, and then just work our way all the way back through all of that damage. Yeah. So I think to start with on this corner, first I flipped the roof over. I don't know if you caught that or not, but I wanted to make sure you're with me. I'm gonna go down here and take a piece of wire and just make a template. And now I know what this bend is supposed to look like. So when you take and flip it, that's how much it needs to move back out and get out of the way. Definitely better than it was, but I think we're gonna have to address that dent to really get that curve back the way we want it. Yes, that's just joyous fun every time. Now the fun part of this is I gotta get this edge of this hammer right there to drive that dent back out. I am guessing I'm not going to be able to swing that. In fact, I'm not even sure that one's the best one. This tip might be easier to hit. Oh my gosh, we're going to be able to use our new do. So basically I've got a ton of just minor hammer and dolly work to go on this. There's nothing super special to show you, so I'm gonna work on it, and if I hit a trouble spot, then I'll come back. So it's not Easter anymore, but I think one of the kids thought it'd be funny to hide an egg in here, and I guess we'll see what's in there. Oh look! Found a nut! This is the good corner. The other one just, there's not much to use. However, we should be able to use this arc for a guidance on the outside of this. And simply match it up with that. We're gonna use our buddy, the old slip roller here. You can see how it's a little beaten up, but how that tucked in there, and this was a smidge tighter. Then our piece is going to replicate that for us and give us that same structure, and then we'll just have to make some sheet metal on top. So one of the things I've noticed now that I've got this piece cut to slide in here is that these need to be pitched down a little bit. the trim piece is just nailed to that wooden structure before. And so I tried to set this gap where they naturally wanted to sit. You have this line up at the top, which aligns with the top of this, and then tried to keep the gap consistent. And I used the poor man's clamps, which is just tape, and tried to match everything up on both sides. And now I'm going to see what it looks like on the front of the... What you can see is once I get the driver's side in place, and I go to put it in place on the passenger side, I'm hitting with the hinge out, and vice versa. If I put the passenger side in, then the driver's hit. And I think what we're going to end up saying is
hasta la vista, baby.
Hinge out windshield. Another quick tip I like to use when I'm doing stuff is to use one of these fabric tape measures when it's not like on the shape of this cowl. I want to find center. So instead of trying to fight a tape measure and figure it out, especially with my wingspan, I like to take one of these fabric tape measures and lay it across, and I can use a magnet to hold that in. But I want to give you two pieces of advice. First, if you borrowed this from your wife, husband, partner's, girlfriend, boyfriend's clean, nice inside tools, make sure to clean the area before you use it. And honestly, I just recommend, as far as the second point, to just get one and keep it out in your garage. That way you don't have to worry about messing theirs up and the impending consequences that may bring. Luckily, I ain't afraid of my wife, and I'm gonna just go ahead and use it. So after measuring, using levels, doing everything I could think of to make sure this windshield is centered, it all came down to a pinky test. If the pinky fits the same on both sides, we got her. We got her. As far as I can tell, that is centered. The windshield frame itself has to be touching right here in order for the rubber to nest in there right. And just looking at it, that's gotta be how it sits. Once I got it into position, it's rubbing on one of my fancy welds right there after the adjustment, so I'm gonna have to grind that down. So I've got the up here where the A-pillar was interfering, I grinded that down and put some more spray paint on it to seal it up. But I also cleaned up this A-pillar cover, and I cleaned all this around here, put some weld-through primer underneath it, and then I cleaned up all these edges and got them all hammered down and fitting really tight. So I'm going to put a couple of tacks on it because this is all lined up, and then we'll work on the other side. Then we can put it all in with the windshield frame and see what's going on. What I'm trying to do is this lip right here between the frame and the actual rubber seal. I think that's what's supposed to sit on that ring all the way around, and I'm trying to get that all lined up. Sometimes it's the damnedest things. That little bend right there was causing all of my fitment issues on the driver's side. So I just got to hammer it out, and away we go. So I think that this thing is, instead of it being like, if you notice this, instead of it being like that, I think this back edge might be too far out, and it's pivoting it. So instead of it being like this, it's like this, and making it not sit the way it's supposed to. If I set the bottom right where it goes, it lines up really well, and you come up, and then you can, as you come up, you can see it rolling like in. And I think it's got to be this piece, but I just don't know how to know where it's supposed to be. Now we can start to figure out how we're going to mount the windshield, because I'm officially taking this pivot out. It's not going to swing out anymore. I'm going to reuse these little mounting points that were originally right here on the windshield frame that were part of that swing out system. And what I'm going to do is clean that up, and I'm going to tack it, or I'm going to weld it right there, and then I'll put a stud or a bolt here that'll come through the hole, and that'll be one of our mounting points, and I'll do that on each side. And then we'll have to figure out exactly where I want the other two, but that'll give me two spots to mount it that make sense for keeping it located, because we still have to solve the whole top part too. So I'm going to clean these up and get them tacked on, and then we'll get a bolt in place to make it work. There is the first one mocked in on the passenger side. I went ahead and hit her with the DA. It had a ton of surface rust on it, but it's still a really good piece of 18 gauge sheet metal. And if it was rusty, then it was free. And since it's free, it's definitely for me. What we're gonna do is we're gonna try and recreate this, the flat steel, and then the bend in here and go to it. So the first thing I'm gonna do is approximate just how far that bend is. This is the part that actually hinges on the windshield, the part that attaches the top part of the windshield frame to the inside of the cab. And you can see it's quite a bit shorter. So that's all the farther I need this super flat and straight part. Well, out here on the edges, I just need to fill in that gap. It's hitting right here on the roll cage on both sides, so I'm just going to cut a straight angle. Well, I have some bad news. I just put my roof on to try and see how everything was looking and see where we were laying at. On the passenger front roll bar, vertical bar, it is a smidge too far outside. I was trying to put it in as tight as I could, and it's just far enough that you can see it's hitting there. This gap is too far off, and that's because the roof is hitting my roll bar. And you can see how much different this side sits, and I need to get the average of the two. So we're actually only talking a quarter of an inch, half at most, that I need to move that in. But I just don't see how I'm going to get around it. I've got to move this in. Well, we got it all cleaned up and ready for figuring out how we're going to reattach it after we move it across. So the next time you see this, it'll be all put back together. So you can see that it's sitting higher here than it is there, and it's just my roof's fitment issue. And I was clamping, I needed to pull it that way and kind of, I needed it to go that way and rotate a little bit. For some reason it wasn't quite sitting right, and so I did a little trimming and stuff, but I'm still fighting getting this to be even. Now I like the height of that size, and when this one is down, you know, it's getting pretty close, but I've still got just some minor adjustments. I need to find out what is hanging up and causing it to sit like this, because it didn't do that before. So something about getting this perfectly spaced around, which I wouldn't have thought, but somehow it's made it not quite sit right. So I'm gonna keep, well, and I just thought of this. We fixed all the dents in the roof. There was a ton of dents, just little ones that were up, and we shrunk some, and we put a ton of stuff together. I'll bet you that's the problem. It's just a smidge off here and there, because now it's where it belongs. So I've got to do some adjusting then. So next time we'll go through and we'll figure out exactly where to snip and to trim and to get that haircut looking just good. But for now, I think we've got the windshield figured out on how it's going to mount. I got the brace at the top. We're going to weld it to the top. We've got these two screws, or two bolts, figured out to where it bolts together, and it's going to be a nice, good sealing windshield. So I think the windshield's sorted. Now we just got to get the top sitting right and then seal everything around and get it mounted. I'd like to make it permanent to where it doesn't come off ever again. That'd be quite a milestone. But then after that, we don't have much left on the cab, and we can finally get to actually doing something on the truck itself. So sick of this cab. Oh. But anyway, I feel like we're getting there. I mean, I'm fighting over quarters of inches now instead of feet like I was before. When I first put this together, I was inches apart trying to get it to go and work and get square. Now I'm talking a quarter to, you know, as small as a 16th up to a quarter, and that's a whole lot different world to be in, especially on a truck from 1936. If you've enjoyed this video, I'd really appreciate it if you'd hit the like button. Think about subscribing, or maybe even leave me a comment. Let me know what you think or what you liked. As always, we'll just keep working away until we get to the next one.